Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer in that order. Welcome everyone. I recently purchased a collection that included a 1989 Topps Traded Tiffany baseball complete set. The set was still factory sealed, and I decided to open it. Now, normally I would never open a Tiffany set from the 80s or the early 90s, but in this case I did. I'll explain why in just a little bit. I literally cut the seal, and then 5 seconds later was like, you know what, I should record myself and make a video out of this. So you're not going to see me actually cut the seal, but the video you see is me going through the box, opening the box, and looking at the cards for the first time. I recorded the voiceover later, but that's enough of the technical aspects of the video, which I would guess very few of you care about. For those who don't know, the big card in this set is the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie. His 1989 Topps Traded is quite a common card, but his Topps Traded Tiffany is a big dollar card, especially in high grade. If you look down at the bottom, you can see the average of recent sales. That's the white number in the middle of the card in various PSA grades. For example, in PSA 9, it sells for about $398 on average. PSA 10s go for over $3,000. So given that this set was factory sealed and, in theory, these cards had never been touched before, obviously hoping to pull a Ken Griffey Jr. here that could potentially grade a 10. There's some other notable cards in the set. There's a Randy Johnson rookie, an Omar Vizquel rookie, there's a Deion Sanders rookie, there's a Nolan Ryan, a couple others. Now, the Griffey is really the big home run, but some of the other cards, they don't really have a lot of value raw, but they can fetch some pretty strong prices in PSA 10. So definitely hoping for some PSA 10 contenders here. And I'll go over a lot of those numbers in more detail at the end. So I paid $400 for this set, and if you look on eBay, the sealed sets generally sell around $500 to $700 or so. A couple a little bit more than that, but generally in the $500 to $700 range. But you see the box on this one is pretty beat up. There's like a loose flap at the top, and a lot of the corners are really worn down. And that's actually why I decided to open it. I figured it was better to take the gamble opening it, seeing what it can pull, as opposed to just leaving it sealed. As again, since the box is so beat up, I didn't consider it to have sort of. I think that would affect its value long term if you kept it sealed. So I looked it over a long time before purchasing it, and I was pretty confident that it was not tampered with. It had not been opened and then resealed or anything like that. Everything looked good. It just looked like a beat up old box. So my hope was that the cards were going to come out really, really sharp, and everything was going to be great. And obviously, you get a Griffey 10, you're hit big. You get a Griffey 9, you're probably only going to make a small profit overall, and if you get anything less than a 9 on the Griffey, you're probably going to be losing money given that it paid $400. And yeah, the Griffey's basically going to determine whether this ends up being a good buy or not. So yeah, opening up the box here, first thing of note, everything looks good. Cards don't look like they've been tampered with in any way. There doesn't appear to be any cards missing. They're tight in the box, so that's sort of always a good sign when you're opening something. You want to get that concern out of the way first, and I was pretty confident right off the bat that this had not been opened before, and nothing really to worry about there. And you can see the cards were sort of tough to get out. They were really tight in the box. That's actually always the case with 1980s Topps Traded sets, and with the traded sets from the 80s, the cards are not in any sort of order. They're sort of random. I think they're in the same order every time, but it's not like numerical or alphabetical or anything like that. They're just in a random order. So I noticed that right off the bat as well. Nothing to worry about there. All right, so let's. So first thing I noticed is a lot of these cards are off-centered. If you look at them, every single one is left to right off-centered, with a much wider border along the right than along the left. I mean, maybe 30, 70, and it was with every card. So that was the initial bad news right out of the gate. Now that doesn't mean every single card in the entire box is going to be off-centered, but generally, if a few of them are off-centered, they're all going to be, and you can see so far every card I've gone through is off-centered. Here's Eddie Murray, the first Hall of Famer, and again, way off-centered, 70-30. Now, other than the centering, everything is crisp on all these cards. They don't have like corner issues. In theory, they could have had corner issues because the box was so dinged up. So they could have all had like a dinged corner, but that wasn't the case. So, that part was good. But again, centering, pretty disappointing, right out of the gate here is, again, every card is off-centered, left to right. So for those who don't know, the traded sets from the 80s had players who were recently traded to new teams or a bunch of rookies. So a lot of rookie cards end up in the traded sets. There's Rafael Palmeiro, who had recently been traded to the Rangers. Here's Omar Vizquel. He's the first sort of notable rookie in here, and you can see it's very off-centered, unfortunately. So this would be a card that if it was a 10 contender, I would send it to PSA, but given the centering, no chance at a 10. It's not going to be worth sending in to PSA financially, so I'll probably just end up selling that raw on COMC. That's almost surely where I'll be sending that card. So unfortunate there, but that's how it goes. You know, that's the risk of opening unopened product. Even, you know, even though it's never been touched, there's still obviously issues with all these cards. And I think the Omar Vizquel is probably like a $10 card or so, so somewhere in there. The commons basically have no value, but yeah, the Vizquel is probably a $10 card or so. There's the Griffey, and of course, yeah, unfortunately it is off-centered. Notably off-centered left to right. And yeah, I mean, significantly off-centered left to right. I mean, you know, no chance at a 10 here. Probably even a 9 would be a long shot because of the centering. Everything else about the card is really sharp. Corners are sharp. Edges are really, really sharp. Surface looks really nice. You know, no blemishes whatsoever on the surface. Card looks great. Back looks really, really nice as well. No chipping along the back edges, which is common on black bordered edges, but unfortunately, the centering here, like I said, no chance at a 10. I would say probably not a 9 either. I think this card would probably grade an 8 just because of the centering. And I guess, you know, 7 or a 9 are technically in play. It's still going to be worth sending in because this card is one you want to get graded in any sort of grade. But yeah, I think we're looking at an 8 on the Griffey. Tom Gordon rookie. He's not a big money card, but this is worth sending to COMC. It's off-centered as well, so not even worth considering grading there. And I'll speed up parts of the video where I'm just rummaging through commons. The commons basically have no value, and they're going to be basically donated. Here's a Jim Abbott rookie. Again, that's a card that would be grade worthy if it was a 10 contender, but it's clearly not with the centering. So as is, it will just go to COMC, and I'll sell it raw that way. Kenny Rogers rookie. So same thing. This will go to COMC. So Kenny Rogers, the Jim Abbott, and the Tom Gordon, for anyone wondering, are probably all a couple bucks each, something somewhere in there. So it was around here in the box where the cards actually stopped being off-centered, and they started being centered again. That's just probably the way it was cut at the factory on the sheet. And here you can see the Deion Sanders rookie is actually centered really, really well. And this card was really sharp, basically perfect everywhere. Corners, edges, surface, all great. And the centering is actually really, really nice on this card. So this is another card. You can see the back has no issues as well. This is a card I'll send a PSA as well. There'll be a huge jump in value if this card gets a 10. Probably a small jump in value if it gets a 9. And I think this card is a 10 contender. So financially, it's going to make sense. Again, I'll go over all those numbers at the end here in a bit. But the Deion Sanders is the second card from the set along with the Griffey that I'll be sending into PSA. There's Ken Griffey Sr. Not worth anything, but Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. in the same traded set. Greg Olson, he was Rookie of the Year for the Orioles. Randy Johnson, there's his rookie, and yeah, a little bit off-centered left to right. It's actually in the other direction. The left border this time is wider than the right. The card has no chance at a 10, so unfortunately this one will not be going to PSA. If it came back a 9, it would be a bump in value, but just a small bump, and if it came back an 8, then it would be, you know, a loss. So not going to be worth it financially to take the risk on the Randy Johnson sending it to PSA. It will go to COMC, and it's probably a $10 to $15 card raw. And here's the Nolan Ryan, and this one was a little bit off-centered as well. Not much, but enough where I don't think a 10 was in play. About 60-40 left to right. And with a 10 not in play, similar to the Randy Johnson, you know, a 9 might be a small bump, and an 8's going to be a loss, so just not going to be worth sending in to PSA with those numbers. So again, like all the other cards, that's going to go to COMC. The Nolan Ryan, I'm not sure, probably a $5 to $10 card raw. Also Ricky Henderson, yeah, this was same thing, off-centered left to right. It's a standard theme in this video. That'll just go to COMC. It's probably worth a couple bucks. And finishing off with 2 more commons in the checklist, and yeah, the Eddie Murray. I guess we'll send that to COMC as well. It's probably only worth a buck or so, but yeah, that's the set. And I ended up with 8 cards that I'm going to go ahead and send to COMC and sell raw that way. Eddie Murray, Ricky Henderson, the Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson rookie, Kenny Rogers rookie, Jim Abbott rookie, Tom Gordon rookie, and Omar Vizquel rookie. And all 8 of those cards were off-centered, so had no chance at a 10. We'll send these 2 cards to PSA. The Deion Sanders I do think is a 10 contender, and that would help a lot to make this a profitable venture. The Ken Griffey Jr. I would guess is going to get an 8 given the centering left to right. All right, let's look at the key cards and then run some numbers. Here's the Griffey. You can see off-centered left to right like we've talked about. As I mentioned, no chance at a 10. I would say a 9 is really a long shot here. I think this card would grade an 8. I'd kind of be surprised at anything other than an 8. 9, I guess a 9's in play in a long shot, and a 7, I mean, 7 would be pretty strict. So I think this card is a strong 8 contender. If we look at the recent sales of the card in various grades, you can see a PSA 8 sells for about $200. So that's probably what I'm looking at after getting this card graded. Probably going to sell it for around $200. All right, if we look at the Deion Sanders, my eye couldn't find anything wrong with it. It's centered, no issues that I could see. So I think it's a 10 contender. If we look at sales of the card in recent sales, you can see a PSA 10 goes for about $375, whereas a PSA 9 goes for about $55. Big difference there between a 9 and a 10. And I would, guess it's going to get a 9 or a 10. I would say a 9 is probably more likely than a 10. I'm just saying that based on my recent PSA experiences. All right, if we look at a couple of the cards that I'm not going to be sending in, the Nolan Ryan, you can see is off-centered left to right, no chance at a 10. And if we look at recent sales of the card graded, PSA 10s go for $900. Unfortunate that has no chance there at a 10, but 9s are only about $50, 8s are about $30. Given that it's already like a $15 card raw, and there's going to be a $20 grading fee, there's just not enough there to warrant sending this card in. And the Randy Johnson, very similar. It's off-centered, no chance at a 10. 9s go for about $75. 8s go for about $30. It's already a $20 card raw, so when you consider a $20 grading fee and you got to wait 3 months or whatever to get your cards back, there might be a small expected profit if I were to send this in with a good chance at a 9, but it's just not enough to warrant it for me. So if we look at the numbers here, paid $400 for the set. I'm going to assume the Griffey's going to grade an 8 and the Deion is going to grade a 9. Going to sell those plus the 8 cards on COMC. There are PSA fees for the 2 cards, of course, and then there will be seller fees when I go to sell all this. So if you add all that up, I'm expecting to lose about $176 on this purchase. Obviously not the result I was looking for. Would have done better to just sell it as a set in hindsight, of course. Paid $400. Probably could have sold it for around $500 on eBay as a sealed set. Like I said, they sell for generally between $500 and $700, but the box was beat up, so I think it would be on the low end of that range if I were to have sold it as a set. But that was the gamble of opening it. Now I should say, I have here the Deion being a 9. If the Deion comes back a 10, which I definitely think is in play, then the numbers look like this, and I'm actually up $94 on this set. So that is a wild card, and it's sort of funny that the Deion Sanders is going to be the card that determines whether I lose money or make a small profit on this. You would assume it's the Griffey, but the Griffey, like I've mentioned already, I think is I would be kind of surprised if it's anything other than an 8. And of course, these numbers are all just estimated, so things could swing a little bit, in either direction. But that's it for now. Thank you everyone for watching. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I really appreciate it. See you all again next time. Thanks everyone.